Qantas's share price takes off after the national carrier finally returns to profitability. Stage 3 tax cuts won't be changed in the upcoming budget, and TikTok wants to take on Spotify. It's Friday, the 14th of October, 2022. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, we have a little bit of a favour to ask today, and it's really about a survey that Fear and Greed is running, and it's on our LinkedIn page. So head to Fear and Greed on LinkedIn, and you can take this survey. Really, we want to know kind of what you want to hear, what news and information are relevant and important to your business and your investments. It's a pretty easy survey.
It is very easy. Just a few questions. It'll only take you a couple of minutes, I would say. It helps us enormously because it does, just in terms of tailoring the content, it also helps our sponsors know exactly who they're talking to. So we just encourage everyone that can to go to LinkedIn and search for Fear and Greed and fill in our survey.
Yeah, it took me about 3 minutes to do it, and then I realised afterwards that you probably don't want to know about me.
No, I'm not interested in you.
Unfortunately, I realised that after I hit submit. So we'll just, unfortunately, I'm now in there as well as as part of our audience. But really, we're a very inclusive show. Sean, immediately after the program today, you've got an interview coming up about a story that we talked about a lot yesterday because it is a big issue at the moment. You're speaking to Dr. Nicola Powell from online property group Domain.
Yes, it's all about the rising rental costs in houses and apartments are actually flying higher than houses in terms of rents. What it means, in terms for investors and for house prices, but also the social cost of rising rents and what it means for society as a whole. Really fascinating chat.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's coming up a little bit later on. The main story this morning, though, Sean, forget the long queues, forget the lost luggage, the threat of industrial action, and the rest of the bad news. Qantas's shares are back, jumping 9% yesterday.
Yes, that was on the back of an upbeat quarterly update that forecast half-year pre-tax profit could be up to $1.3 billion. That's about twice what some analysts had predicted, and it comes after $7 billion in accumulated losses during COVID. Quite the turnaround. Qantas said travel demand was far outpacing higher fuel costs and inflation. Its share price is at its highest level since June in a very weak market. Net debt will fall between $3.2 billion and $3.4 billion in the first half. Qantas also said its operational performance was reaching pre-pandemic levels of service. Now, Chief Executive Alan Joyce defended current high prices, saying they have to be up where they are to pay for fuel bills. And he said service levels were now approaching pre-COVID standards. In any case, obviously people are still using the national carrier, and notwithstanding all the stuff-ups of recent months, Qantas's revenue from business customers is back over 100% of pre-COVID levels. And when it comes to the leisure market, it's at 130%.
And what about one of the big issues, really, on-time performance?
Well, Mr. Joyce highlighted that for 8 of the last 12 months, Qantas's on-time performance was ahead of Virgin. In October this month, it's at about 75%. Mr. Joyce said domestic capacity was around 94% of pre-COVID levels, and international capacity is creeping up. It'll be about 77% by the end of the year.
All right, well, I'm due to take a Qantas domestic flight tomorrow, so I will report back on Monday as a survey of one to let you know if it was on time, Sean. I'm sure you'll be fascinated to hear that.
Yes.
One last thing on Qantas. There's been this ongoing fight with the unions. What's going on there?
Well, as you say, they've been in a fight with unions and workers to accept a 2-year wage freeze, followed by an annual increase of 2%. Now the airline says it can offer an annual increase of 3% after the wage freeze, of course, which it hopes will be enough to do a deal with unions and ward off industrial action. Travellers like yourself are very hopeful that does get passed through.
Yes, indeed. All right, now you've mentioned Qantas obviously had a good day yesterday. How about the rest of the local market?
Well, the S&P ASX 200 closed down slightly yesterday, 5 points to 6,643 points, with financials doing well, while almost all the other sectors went backwards. Real estate investment trusts were among the worst performers. Now, remember the Bank of Queensland result? We talked about it yesterday. It came out on Wednesday, and it showed stronger profit margins in the September quarter. Well, that good news flowed through to the rest of the sector. Commonwealth Bank, National Australia Bank and ANZ were all up around 2%, Westpac jumped 3%. It's been quite a ride for Westpac. Away from financials, mostly it was red numbers. BHP, CSL, Woodside Energy and Transurban all fell by around 1%. Goodman Group was down 1.4%, while WiseTech Global and REA both dropped 2.3%. Qantas, of course, was the best performer, while shares in NIB Holdings fell 12% after it completed its fully underwritten $135 million institutional placement. It was the worst on the day. Just a quick one, human resources group Elmo Software confirmed that several parties had approached it about a transaction. Its share price was up more than 20%.
Elmo Software has to be one of the great names, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It is. Oh, just think of the red furry character in The Muppets or Sesame Street.
Sesame Street, yeah, indeed. Doesn't really tell you what the company does, but great image.
Well, human resources software. So you would think Elmo would be a friendly sort of happy bloke, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and talks kind of high-pitched and happily. Yeah.
I don't know what that's got to do with human resources, but anyway.
Well, about as much as a furry red creature does, I suppose.
Yes.
All right, international markets. What happened yesterday?
Well, oil prices fell again yesterday with a key US inflation metric higher than estimated, adding to the debate about whether the Federal Reserve Bank will keep lifting interest rates. Brent crude's trading around $92 a barrel, gold's down a bit, and the Aussie dollar is trading around 63 US cents.
All right, plenty happening. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers yesterday said stage 3 tax cuts, which were legislated to begin in the middle of 2024, won't be altered in the mini budget in 2 weeks' time.
It seems Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has stepped in and said hands off, given the intense publicity around the potential to repeal the legislated tax cuts. Dr. Chalmers says he's more interested in finding short-term solutions to drive down inflation, and the government has more pressing priorities than changing the stage 3 tax cuts. Looks like he's been overruled to me. He said the government would trim waste and rorts in the budget, but he refused to rule out introducing tighter gas controls to ease the cost of energy on Australian consumers.
Sean, the Reserve Bank's payment systems failed yesterday, really disrupting payments right across the country.
Yeah, the systems went out between 9:30pm and midnight on Wednesday night, meaning many customers couldn't send money via bank apps or websites. Yesterday morning at just after 8 o'clock, the central bank tweeted that it had experienced an internal system engineering issue and it had been contained. Now, it wasn't a cyber breach. The bank made that clear. The outage affected the OSCO system, which you might see when you look at your bank statements, OSKO, you see that. It's the fast payment system, and that's really what broke down, meaning that bank customers couldn't transfer money in real time.
OSCO is the greatest system, isn't it? When it clearly when it works, actually being able to transfer money pretty much in real time.
It's changed. Yeah, it's totally revolutionised how you think about money. It's great.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sean, one organisation that has been hit by a cyber breach is Medibank Private.
Shares in the health insurer were halted yesterday following a cyber incident. Medibank said it had detected unusual activity on its network and had engaged specialised cybersecurity firms. At this stage, there's no evidence that any data, including customer information, has been accessed. Medibank has taken some of its customer-facing systems offline, disrupting some services to its 3.7 million members. And just while on the subject of cybersecurity, the Commonwealth Bank said it's receiving 5,000 additional customer calls per day ever since the Optus cyber breach. It's not necessarily related. I mean, they're not all related to the Optus cyber breach, but obviously it's pushed it to top of mind for many people.
Yeah, and just even having the capacity to deal with that many extra calls, that is a lot of people.
5,000 extra calls. How would you get it normally? Yeah, it's incredible.
The federal government, Sean, claims that the crippling visa backlog is easing, with more than 1 million applications to enter Australia processed since June.
There are now about 880,000 people still waiting for their visas to be processed. Immigration Minister Andrew Giles yesterday promised new policy changes to streamline reviews, adding that more than 1.35 million visas for students, temporary skilled workers and visitors have been processed since June the 1st. About 2.2 million new visa applications have been received since that date, up about 500,000 from a year ago. They really are huge numbers, but it does feel like things are just starting to get back to normal.
Yeah, and COVID isolation ends today, Sean, pretty much right across the country, and health experts have called for personal vigilance to avoid further large outbreaks and the possible effects of long COVID.
Yes, long COVID is real, and the main symptoms involve fatigue, aches and pain, sleep disturbance, and brain fog, which apparently is a medical term, Michael. I had no idea. There you go. The good news is that people will recover, but it will take time. Experts believe Australia will more than likely experience another wave of COVID-19 infections in coming months, but each wave is less damaging than the previous one.
In economic news, Sean, payroll jobs rose just 0.3% in the month to 17 September, continuing the slow pace of growth.
That's right. Payroll jobs jumped in 7 of the 19 industry categories, with the biggest being in education and training, retail, trade, and professional, scientific, and technical services industries. Now, the increases are largely seasonal, according to the Bureau of Statistics. Bjorn Jarvis from the Bureau said payroll jobs have now continued to grow slowly across 2022, with average monthly growth over the past 6 months of just 0.3%. Now, this reflects the sustained tightness in labour market conditions across the country.
The Star Entertainment Group's new CEO will start almost 3 months earlier than expected as the casino group fights to convince gambling regulators that it should keep its casino licences.
Surely running the Star must be among the most challenging CEO jobs in the country, don't you reckon?
Yeah, and he wants to get into it early.
The guy's name's Robbie Cook. He's currently the Tyro boss. He'll start work at the casino group on Monday rather than December 31. Now, of course, both the New South Wales and Queensland governments have asked the Star to show cause why it should keep its gaming licences in the two states. It's still got to respond to the Queensland request. The New South Wales request, it has done so. It's waiting for the New South Wales regulator to say whether or not it does keep its licence. Anyway, Robbie Cook, big job.
Yes, certainly is. Sean, Victoria is facing more rain today after record falls and very strong winds cut power to 26,000 homes.
Yes, winds reached as much as 130 kilometres per hour, and Victorian Electricity Distribution Power Company Powercor reported power loss in the state's west. A number of flood warnings were issued, and people in low-lying areas were told to move to higher ground. There were also landslides on the Great Ocean Road in the southwest of the state. Flooding also hit Tasmania, while people in the New South Wales central west town of Forbes have been asked to evacuate to avoid major flooding. Unfortunately, Michael, there's more rain forecast for the next week.
Okay, now moving on to overseas news, Sean, US President Joe Biden declared yesterday that the overwhelming challenge for the United States in the coming year would be, and I quote, outcompeting China and restraining Russia while focusing on restoring a damaged democracy at home.
In his 48-page national security strategy, which every new administration is required to issue, Mr. Biden made clear that over the long term, he was more worried about China's moves to layer authoritarian governance with a revisionist foreign policy than he was about a declining, battered Russia. According to a report in the New York Times, China is the only country with both the intent to reshape the international order and increasingly the economic, diplomatic, military and technological power to advance that objective, the president wrote.
Sean, during August, the UK economy shrunk for the second time in 3 months, suggesting that the country might now be in recession.
Yes, it's a fairly good bet, actually. The 0.3% drop in output during the month was driven by a big fall in manufacturing as well as a drop-off in services, according to the Office for National Statistics. The UK economy is measured in 3 segments. You have manufacturing, you have services, the other one's construction. That sector actually expanded. The decline means the economy, which is the 6th largest in the world, will be lucky to avoid recession, which some economists think will last into 2023. Now, here's a pop quiz for you, Michael. What are the other 5 bigger economies?
Bigger than the UK. So
Yes.
The US.
Yes.
China.
Yep.
Then Germany.
Yep.
Um,
There's one other obvious one. Still a lot of coal to it.
Yes, yeah, the one that loves its coal. Yeah, good one.
Japan.
Yeah, obviously, I was going to say Japan. Could have let me finish. And then obviously, then there's
The 5th one, number
Brazil.
5, India.
India. That's what I said.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
All right, 5 from 5. Good stuff. Sean, this is a pretty serious story. This is an extraordinary story, really, and it's pretty confronting. Right-wing conspiracy theorist Alex Jones must pay $965 million US. That's about 1.5 billion Australian, in damages to families and an FBI agent ravaged by the InfoWars founders' lie that the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre was a hoax. This was the outcome from a US jury in the last couple of days.
Yes, the verdict, which followed a 4-week trial pitting the combative internet host against the victims' families, brings the total damages to more than $1 billion. Now, it includes an award of almost $50 million in Texas for the family of a first grader killed in the 2012 mass shooting. A gunman killed 20 children and 6 staff members at Sandy Hook Elementary School in December 2012. Jones claimed for years that the massacre was staged as part of a government plot to take away Americans' guns. The families, meanwhile, suffered a decade-long campaign of harassment and death threats by Jones's followers, according to their attorney, Chris Mattei. Testimony from an employee of Jones has pegged his total earnings from the sale of dietary supplements, books, and survival gear. Now, he became famous because of these views, hence people started buying his products. So the total earnings at somewhere between $100 million and $1 billion since the shooting.
You don't even know what to say about that, do you? It's just those poor families that had already been through so much.
I actually have a friend whose child was at the school of the day, and it has changed their life totally. The child was safe and wasn't harmed, thankfully. But, when you just see some of the things that Alex Jones wrote, it enraged me. It was so wrong.
I think it would enrage any reasonable person.
Yeah.
All right, one last one, Sean, a bit of a change of pace to finish on it. TikTok parent ByteDance has begun talks with music labels about expanding its music streaming service globally to compete with Spotify.
That's right. ByteDance wants the service to eventually be integrated within TikTok and to serve as a major platform for distributing music around the world, according to the Wall Street Journal. ByteDance has discussed in recent months launching its Rezo music streaming service. Currently, that's available only in India, Indonesia, and Brazil. It wants to push it into more than a dozen additional markets. ByteDance has said it wants the service to be available globally so that users can discover songs on the short-form video app and then easily subscribe to music. The really interesting thing about this, my kids know so many songs from the 60s, 70s, and 80s because they've heard them on TikTok. So the idea is let's push them further. Let's get them to subscribe to a music streaming service from TikTok so they can hear the whole version. Gotta love competition.
Yeah, good one. All right, up next is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview with Dr. Nicola Powell from online property group Domain.
Yes, as we mentioned at the top of the show, all about rents and rising rents, and not just what it means for people renting apartments and homeowners, also the social cost that comes with it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting chat. It's coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Friday, the 14th of October, 2022. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And today, please jump onto LinkedIn as well and take our quick survey telling us what you want to hear on Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.